All right, hey, welcome everyone. Chris Petrie here. Thanks so much for coming by and joining along here. We're going to be doing a beautiful coastal scene here with boats and fishing shacks and boathouses and sailboats and weeds and grasses along the coast and sand. And we're just going to have a great time. Distant purple mountains along the coast here with beautiful warm, sunny, and cloudy skies. We're having so much fun. We'll have our picture here that we're going to work from right here on our phone at all times on the video, so you'll be able to work along with this photo. And I'm also going to put this painting on my homepage on YouTube. So if you just go to my YouTube homepage, Chris Petrie, you click on my homepage and you'll see under community, I'll post this photo on that. So you can also have this photograph. You can use this finished painting. If you want to use this as your reference, that's fine too. So I will start posting my photographs of my finished paintings onto my homepage. I think I'm allowed 5 paintings at one time. So you'll see maybe a few weeks ago I've posted my other paintings. You can look at those. And then as I go each week, I'll put the newer paintings on all of the time. So you'll always have the recent paintings that we're working on my YouTube channel homepage under community. When you click on community, you scroll down a little bit and you'll see all of the photographs of our recent tutorials that we're doing here on YouTube. So I'm glad you're here, glad you're working along with us. We're going to have a fun time enjoying ourselves with watercolor. And if you're just new and just starting out, that's great. And that's fine, because as long as you're sticking here week after week, month after month, and year after year, you're going to get better. You're going to create beautiful watercolors as you go. It's going to take some time, but the more you join along with us, the easier it becomes and the more you learn, and that's all that matters. If you're just working a little bit at it every week with us, you will make a lot of progress. Okay? All right, let's get right into the video. All right, we just saw the finished painting, and we're going to start out by just looking at our subject matter. So we have a beautiful coastal scene. We have beautiful water, like a nice bay, and some clouds in the sky. So it's kind of a cloudy day with some sun maybe peeking through the clouds. We have a few boats here in the foreground, a few boats in the distance here, a sailboat sailing on the bay water here. So we have so many fun things we're looking at here. There's so many exciting details. We'll simplify it a little more maybe than what we see here in this photograph. There's a fishing shack over here and boathouse or something to that effect over here on the left-hand side. And we have, again, a few boats here in the foreground. Some beautiful grass and weeds and things along the coastline here, along the banks of the bay area here, this ocean and bay. So let's get started. The first thing I'd like to mention is when you're looking at a scene like this, you're going to have like kind of 2 considerations when you first start out creating this drawing. So we're going to do what's called a contour drawing, but first we're going to do what's called the preliminary sketch. So I hope you'll kind of get familiar with those 2 terms, contour drawing and preliminary sketch. I use that method and technique practically every time I'm working with a watercolor painting. So I'm hoping you'll follow along here, maybe take jot down a few notes as to what each of those are, just so you have it. But you'll see it anyway on my videos. So if you're watching my videos on a consistent basis and you find that you really are happy with my videos and my content, well, then you'll kind of just automatically always be using those methods and techniques, because you'll just be following along with the videos and incorporating that into your process when you're watercolor painting. But I know some of you maybe watch many different channels, and that's why I just mentioned it. You know, maybe you're going to be watching 2 or 3 different YouTube artists and so forth, and so maybe you stop by here once in a while and you're going to different other artists on YouTube, and that's fine too. You should always get lots of different information as you're working with your watercolors and getting better. It's good to have a lot of information versus less information. But in any case, we'll just start out with the preliminary sketch. So basically we're looking at this and saying, okay, let's get a feel for the general layout of this painting, the design of it, whoever created this photograph or this painting or oil painting, whatever this might be. You know, I'm just making the observation here that they left the sky kind of smaller, and they left the ocean and the boats and the foreground larger in the scene. So if you could imagine, we could say this is like broken up into 1/3. So if it's like a recipe, you know, maybe if you're making a nice recipe like some pasta with some clams and garlic and onions and some broth, some clam broth, and maybe some shrimp in there with some garlic and fresh parsley, salt, pepper. You know, you can cook up some pasta with that, maybe some linguine, make some nice linguine, a little bit of olive oil, you know, in a fry pan. You can have a really nice recipe. I'm thinking about maybe making that for dinner tonight. But anyway, let's kind of have that idea of 1/3. We're kind of doing a recipe here. What's the recipe for our design of our painting? Well, it's thirds. 1/3 here, 1/3 here, which is like the coastal grass areas and weeds and banks of this first area we're looking at here, across here where the boats are, kind of up on the bank of the shoreline here. So that's our first third here. So we could call that 1/3. And then we have second third would be up here, which is the distant, far distant bay coast back here where there's a couple sailboats and another couple boats over here. And that's going to be about 2/3 up from the bottom. So 1/3, and then we have 2/3 here. And then 3/3 would be the very, very top portion here, which is going to be the sky. So now if we talked about kind of using the method of preliminary sketching, which is, this is part of preliminary sketching, getting your hash marks and your layout of your design in your painting right at the beginning. So let's do that. Okay, so we have our first third here. Well, that's going to be the banks of the shore here. So we're going to do a little bit of the very, very light preliminary sketching, just something like this, just going across. That's the weeds and things like this. Okay, and what I'll do is we're going to do it darker. Even though at home you're going to do this really, really super light, I'm going to do it darker so you can see what I'm doing here on camera, because my lights here, I notice my cameras on my video lights here, they don't really help us to see the really light sketching. So that's why I'm going to go darker here. But you remember that this first sketch you're going to do, preliminary sketch, is going to be very, very light. So but you see I went darker just so you can see what I'm doing. Then our second part of our preliminary sketch is over here. We're going to do that distant shoreline up here. And it's kind of further back over here. And then it kind of comes forward a little bit. You'll see that. Okay, so it kind of comes forward a little bit here as the bay shoreline gets a little closer to us. Like this. And that's about the preliminary sketch as we create that bay shoreline going here across there. And then our top third is going to be our clouds. And you could put a little, maybe a line for the clouds. Maybe you want to make a few little gestures of some lines for your clouds. But that is basically your preliminary sketch along with your boats here. You just want to pencil in your boats. So you're going to do some of your, and again, if you're just starting out here for the first time and you don't kind of follow along as much on my channel, I guess my preliminary sketch is really very, very super light, almost like you're just putting a very, very tiny light sketch, barely visible to you at home. Here I'm going darker so you can see what I'm doing. And then we have the boat here. Okay, so we have the boat over here, fishing boat. And then maybe we have another boat over here. This is another fishing boat over here. And it comes over here like that. And then maybe we'll look at this. There's a dark boat here. You can see that. It's somewhat dark over here. Okay. Like that. And it might be a little bit okay. And then over here, again, we're preliminary sketching. There's another small boat over here, maybe, like this, and then another boat over here. And then there's a sailboat over here in the far distance. We just do that, a little sailboat like that. Another one over here, too, like that. So now you can kind of see we've got our preliminary sketch done. We also want to get a little bit of the distant mountains. So those are here, the distant hills and mountains along the coastline. And you can kind of see I'm just going to go right across. And we did have our boathouse and fishing shack over here on the left side over here. So we'll just make our mountains like this, our hills, like so. Then we're going to make some sand areas of this coast over here, some sandbars over here. And then over here, we notice that this boat here, this fishing boat, the shacks are straight up above this fishing boat, so we kind of know right away where we're going to locate these. Does that make sense? So when you're kind of looking around your painting and you're designing it and drawing it and doing your preliminary sketch, you're just going to look around and say, I'll use other items in my painting that I've already drawn in and use those for like markers, so that I kind of can look at those and say, well, where is, if I'm going to be drawing up here now, and I'm saying, well, where is that fishing shack and that boathouse up here? If I look at my drawing here and I look at the painting here, I notice it's directly above this boat here. So that gives me the location. And then I just say, okay, well, it's right above here. And that's all you have to remember is you're always trying to use, if this makes sense, you're trying to always use information that you've drawn into your painting to find other information by using those parts as like waypoints. And you say, oh, well, where's my sailboats? Well, here's my second boat over here, and the sailboat looks a little bit over here to the right of this. And then if we look here, here's this other fishing boat here, and then sure enough, yeah, our sailboat in the distance over here is kind of like over to the right a little bit, same as here. So you're always kind of looking at things and trying to just kind of use coordinates and things like that to find other places in your painting where you can place your subject matter. So we have this fishing shack over here, and then we have another behind that. This might be the boathouse, a little bit larger, like this. Okay, so there we have that. And then there's another maybe boathouse over here, like this. And that's about it. You could put a few more lines here for the rolling hills next to the coastline here. So if you could imagine this distant darker, you can see this darker blue. That's like a darker blue, purple, bluish purple mountain range that comes across the whole entire top of this section here. That cool bluish purple, that's your mountain range that's coming along the coastline here all the way across. So it's not the entire coastline though. You can see there's grass and there's hills and grass and sand below that mountain range. So you can imagine that mountain range is sort of in the back, and in front of this mountain range here, this darker bluish purple mountain range, in front of that here, you'll see there are grass, sandy areas, and other bits of hills and rolling hills. So we want to make sure we have those in there, and that gives us more depth, if you can imagine, right? So if you can have more layers of parallel lines going across your painting like this, so if you can have a lot of parallel lines going across here like so, you can see it's the coastal line right along the sand where the water is, and then you have your sandy beach over here, that white sand, kind of tan looking sand that goes across, and then some more brown, kind of like beachy sand, and then you start getting into some greens too, which is some grassy hills. So you have all those layers of really nice, like almost like stripes or lines going across before you get to those darker mountains. So if you can always think of it as, if you can get more interesting parallel lines of different terrain in this portion of the painting back here, you're going to give yourself the feeling of more depth in your painting, and it's going to look more convincing and more realistic and three-dimensional. I hope you'll kind of take me up on that and check that out in this actual photograph right here. And then as we're painting this, we'll go over that in detail as we go, as we paint. We'll go through that detail of good details over here with these parallel lines going across in this more of the distant part of this painting here in the background, the further distance here. And then we're going to have some wonderful grasses and weeds and things like this in the foreground that are going to give us that real feeling of we're very close up to these boats here and this grassy bit of coastline here. All right, so what I'm going to do is we did the preliminary sketch. I think right now, since I went so dark with my preliminary sketch, I won't do a contour drawing. But essentially, your contour drawing would just be, if we did this just like we're kind of explaining it, this darker sketch that I just did, or drawing, if we did a preliminary sketch, that would be really super light. So you would do that first, super light. This way it gives you the opportunity, if you need to, you can erase a few things. You might have said to yourself, I made that coastline there a little bit too drastic. Maybe I need to just kind of make some lines a little more, slowly going back into the distance versus making large, shifts in the parallel lines that are going this way. Oh, you might say, this distant mountain back here, I think I needed a little more area where it's just kind of not as many trees. Maybe it's just a little more like this. And then some more trees over here like that. So when you do your preliminary sketch, that gives you the chance to, since it's only a light sketch, you can erase a few things and adjust a few things. Then you can go back over on top of this really super light sketch and do a darker drawing so you can really see all of the lines. So when you go to paint, you're going to have everything there. You can see everything clearly. So let's take a quick break. We'll do the darker pencil line over the top of this just so we kind of get the feel for the two-part step to your drawing, which is 1, preliminary sketch, 2, contour drawing over the top of your preliminary sketch. Okay, so we'll come back and we'll do that next, and then once we're done with that, we're going right into the painting. We're going to show you how to use all your colors and just lay in some beautiful washes of gorgeous watercolor paint on top of this scene, and you'll have yourselves a gorgeous coastal scene, beautiful boats, sea shacks and boathouses and sailboats and fishing boats and grasses and hills and distant mountains, and you'll be ready to get this done. Get a mat, put a mat over the top of it, pick out a frame, and you're going to frame this and put it on your wall. And if you don't like the way your first painting turns out, no worries. Start another one and do the same painting again, twice. Do it 3-4 times if you have to. The one that turns out the best, that's the one you're going to put into a frame and put it up on your wall or set it up on your desk or give it for a gift or whatever you want to do. But I'm hoping you will get excited and get yourself really pumped up to get some of those paintings that you're doing in frames and frame them up and sign them. And okay, so let's come right back in a second and we'll finish up with our contour drawing. Alright, so what I'm going to try to do is just a quick idea. Let me erase these darker lines. Now the effect I'm going to try to get is that's what the preliminary sketch would look like. Barely visible. You just do that preliminary sketch again just to get everything in the right spot. You're looking at your photograph from your phone, your iPad, your home computer, a book, watercolor book, so forth. Nature if you're outdoors plein air painting. So you're looking at all of these features of your composition and you're saying, okay, well, where is the boathouse and fishing shack? Well, it's directly above the boat here in the foreground, and this boat here, this fishing boat here in the foreground. Well, what's above that? Well, a little bit to the left is this boat here, which is that darker boat here. And then you kind of work your way around the composition like that. And then once you're happy with that and you do your preliminary sketch, then you just go over with your darker contour drawing. So you would again start at your place in the drawing you feel comfortable, and then basically I just go through the drawing just like this with that darker pencil line. Then I come over here, maybe I start up here again with the contour drawing, and then I just look, I keep looking back and forth at my subject matter, so whatever it is you're using, again, photograph or a book, looking back and forth all the time, have my pencil on the paper at all times. And then maybe over here, we can go across here like this. I see this other boat here, the mast on this boat, like this. Then maybe I come back over here and do the rest of the shoreline over here. Some of the mountains over here in the background. Maybe this is a little bit higher than the mountains there. And we're just going to keep going. Maybe these are a little lower, and then they go back up again a little bit. These distant mountains. Then I have the sailboat, like that. Another sailboat over here. Then the shoreline's coming across here. Another boat here, smaller boat. Maybe another one there too, like this. And I'm getting the shoreline in here. Then I see another boathouse over here. Okay. Then there might be another couple of lines here across for the sand and the hills in the background here. And I think that's it. So you can see I went over with the darker lines, and that's the contour drawing, where you're going to basically use your preliminary sketch, your under sketch or your preliminary sketch. That's going to be kind of like your blueprint, and you're sort of going over the top of that with your darker pencil drawing, your contour drawing. And if you need to make adjustments, you'll just make adjustments. You won't see it really, so you can change a little bit your drawing over the top of that lighter pencil drawing, the preliminary sketch. So don't be afraid to make some corrections as you're going with your contour drawing. That's kind of what it is. It's the genius of contour drawing. You have that preliminary sketch underneath to kind of give you the basic where everything is, and then when you go with your darker pencil lines on your contour drawing, you can make little adjustments if you want, make something a little larger, a little smaller, change an angle, change a location of something just a little bit. But that's the way it really works, and it really is a phenomenal method and technique to learn. So now we're completed. Let's get to painting next. So I'll just take a quick break here. I'll get some fresh, clean water for my water bucket here. And again, we have our Prang Oval 16 watercolor set. We're going to have some brushes we'll talk about in a few seconds here. And incidentally, all of my art supplies, they're all down below in the comment section below. So what I want to do is just make sure that I have what I use for my art supplies down below in the comment section. You can research those. You can go on Amazon. I buy 99% of my art supplies on Amazon. You can go and check out the pricing on Amazon, check out all the art supplies I have, all the links. And then you can always, shop from there. Maybe you're not maybe you want to have something a little more different colors, or maybe you want to spend a little more, a little less, whatever it is. But once you get over to Amazon, you can do further research on things. But all my art supplies, brushes, paints, papers, my water buckets, all this stuff, I have it down below, the brands, exact brands that I use. And this way, I've been using these brands for many, many, many years, over 15, 20 years, so I know they all work great. I've had great results with them, so I'm not going to put something in the description box below that isn't of really excellent quality and also fair pricing. So that's my goal, is to make sure you have that information for yourself. Okay, be right back. We'll get started with the painting. And again, thanks for coming by and painting with me. So we're going to get started with the painting in just a second. All right, so we're going to move on now to the painting portion of this video. And before we start, you can always look at these darks and lights in this composition, in this painting, in this subject matter that we're actually working from on our phone here, or on my iPhone. You can look at it as darks and lights. So if you look at the dark and lights of this, you kind of have like a head start as to not getting too worried about whether it's a boat or a fishing shack or a boathouse or a sailboat. You're just kind of thinking to yourself, let's look at it. What are darks? What are lights? Let's go for the darks first. Let's paint the darks first. Now, this is what we call the alla prima method of painting, and I cover that in my book extensively. Whether it's I covered glazing technique and alla prima method and technique, again, completely in my new book. Hope you'll check that out below. In the links below, you'll see that I do have a link to my new book. You can purchase it if you feel that it's going to be worthwhile. You can also click on the video. I have a 2-minute video that shows you all the pages of my book. So this way, when you're buying my book, you're not going to be guessing on what you're going to get. You watch the 2-minute video, and I go through every page of my book. So I just flip through every page of my book. You'll see all the paintings in there, all of the techniques, the brushes, the palettes. I have photographs of all my palettes that I use, the number of palettes I use, all the brushes, pencils, all the exercises that we kind of prepare you for when you're painting watercolors. So you'll have all of that in my book. It's like a user manual for watercolor. And it gets great reviews on Amazon, so you'll know that many people, most everyone that has purchased my book has really good things to say about it and are very happy with it. So I'm hoping you'll find the same thing if you purchase it. So anyway, we're going to just, again, go over quickly the alla prima technique and method. I'm trying to find a soft pencil. Well, in any case, I'll use a magic marker. So we're talking alla prima. Alla prima method for this painting. And basically, it's going in and getting the darks first, the darks and the mediums first. Here, the boats, the shacks, the fishing shacks, whatever, however you want to do it. So like here, we're looking at it. The darks are here, 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 here. A tiny bit there, some really very dark darks, and then you have your medium tonal values. You're not quite that light, kind of medium tonal values. And there's a lot of those. You can see them especially in that mountain range in the background there along the coastal area, and then some along the shoreline and some of the other features here. Okay, so let's think of it that way. Let's think of it as darks and lights, and let's go into the painting starting with the darks first. Get those in, and then we can work from there. And again, all of these art supplies, brushes, paints, papers, everything is below if you need to shop anything. And so here I'm just going to use beginner style painting brushes. These are synthetic brushes, which are really good for beginners, especially if you're just painting for like 6 months or a year and you're still getting used to watercolors. Synthetic brushes are actually they don't hold as much water as the natural hair brushes that you'll find, which are the more expensive brushes and the ones professionals use mostly. So these are there's a lot of professionals that use synthetic brushes too, let me say that, but many professionals do probably choose natural hair brushes, which are like the Kolinsky Sable brushes, over synthetic. But because watercolor, you know, you're using a lot of water, you want to have lots of water absorption in your brush hairs. But this has less water absorption in your brush hairs, and that's good when you just start out, because when you're first starting out in watercolor, sometimes there's a problem where you have too much water in your brushes, and then it floods out your paper and it floods out your colors, and it makes things too watery, and you don't get the proper tonal values, the darks and the lights correct. And then hear me out on that. That's why if you use synthetic brushes, you're going to get your darker tonal values better, because you're going to have less water retention in your brush hairs, if that makes sense. So that's why I use these synthetic brushes, and these are the Prang brush, round brush is a good round brush that comes with this set. So when you buy the Prang set, you'll have this brush automatically, and you can paint smaller paintings just like this with just this one brush. You won't need any other brushes. So if you buy the Prang Oval 16 set, which is very, very economical, it comes with a brush, this brush here, and you can paint all of your paintings with just this one brush that comes with the set, because this is a small scale thumbnail or small composition style with, you know, 5x7 paper. When you get into bigger paintings, you'll need probably larger brushes, but these three brushes will take you a long way. There's a flat brush, 5/8 inch, Princeton Art and Brush Company, and I also use a little bit of a larger round brush here. This is a Simpson number 9 round brush. It's kind of very unique. You can see it's kind of got like a pearl finish. I've had this for many, many years. It lasts a long time. It still has a great point. So I just get my brushes here, dip them in the fresh, clean water that we're going to use. So we have fresh, clean water in our water bucket. I'll probably add a little more water to that, but I don't want to add too much water. We're just starting out the painting. We don't need a whole lot of water. We're just going to basically use less water and just more paint. And so you'll have a paper towel or a tissue in hand, or a sponge too. You can put a sponge next to your water pail. So I have my water pail over here on the right hand side like this, and you can have a sponge here to just, when you rinse off your brush, you can tap on your sponge if you want, or a paper towel like this. You could rinse off your brush, tap off a little bit of the water, and then you can come over and grab your paint and then work on your painting, and you won't have water flooding everywhere and kind of making a mess on the painting. So that hopefully that's helpful. That's kind of just a tidbit of information we can use. So I'll put my water bucket back over here on the right hand side and of my table, and we'll start out with our darker darks. So let's start out with the Prang brush, and we're going to go with we're going to start out with brown here, and I use tissues too as well to dry off. So I rinse off the brush, dry off a little bit of the water, and then we'll go and get some blue. So now what we're mixing is a really beautiful dark, which is a cool and warm dark. So you have this dark blue and brown, and that gives you a really wonderful dark. You can add a little bit of red to it if you want. So you can just infuse a little bit of red into that if you'd like. And that's going to get you your beautiful, wonderful darks here, and then that's what we're going to do. We're going to go right in and start working on our darks right here on this boat, fishing boat here. Now, to get some of the grasses and weeds and things along this boat, you can do what's called negative shade painting. That means you're going to paint around the grass and weeds with your dark paint like this. And when you do that, you paint around the grass. That creates your grass and your weeds. Like that. I hope that really will help you. Negative shade painting is a great way to paint sometimes when you want to get some things done quickly and you don't want to stress over anything. You just want to. So that's all I had to do, was just paint around the grass and the weeds with my dark painting. with my dark colors, like that. And you can soften some out. You don't have to have it completely perfect like this. But that's enough that we see that that is some grass and weeds along the side of this boat. And then what we do is we're going to take some of that same blue here, like this, and that's, you see how that's a lighter tonal value? That's going to be the light side of the boat, and that's right here. Okay, and that is looking good. We'll get some more dark, maybe some more blue there. Now, as you can see, we're going to do the same thing over here on this part of the boat. We'll go with the lighter blue, like that. Maybe we'll make that more brown than we do blue, so we'll add some brown to that. If it becomes too dark, you can always lift up with your tissue a little bit of paint. One dab like that, and that's it. And that lightens up that section there along this side of the boat. And then we'll just make a quick note that the light is coming from this side of the painting. This is always a great bit of information for you to capture in your preliminary setup when you're doing your painting. Right when you're doing your composition and things, you get your light insignia up here, which is a spotlight insignia with the light shining, and that lets you know the sunlight's coming from this direction, and then that helps us to know that the boat is going to be lighter on this side over here and darker on this side. And as well as all these other features in the painting are going to follow that same idea of the light coming from this way across. So we're going to continue on. We're going to get our darks. We said we were going to get our darks. We're going to keep working on those. We'll get a little bit of orange and then pick up a little bit of that blue and brown. And we're going to make like an orangey brown there. And we'll make this dark over here, like this. Same thing. Negative shade painting, where we paint some lines for some weeds like this, like that. I rinse off my brush, dry off the water on a tissue, paper towel or a sponge like we said before, and then we can make our lighter yellowy orange over here. So I'm just going to notice I'm just mixing out a little more colors now. So we're going to make this a little bit of yellow added to that brown we just made over here, and that'll be this side of the boat, which is lighter. The sunlight's striking this side of the boat over here, and this side's in shadow, and you could take a little dark there and add maybe a little more dark there to this side over here. And already you can see we have accomplished quite a bit. We have two really large prominent darks in our painting right now, right here, these two boats right here in the foreground. Now we're going to say the next large dark is over here, these fishing boats or fishing shacks in a boathouse. Let's use the same blues and browns we used over here, and let's get those in. So I'm carefully putting in those darks now, like that. That's the one dark I can definitely see over here too. There's some dark on this side of that boathouse, like that. Then I rinse off the brush, dry off a little bit of the water. Maybe I pick up some brown, medium tone brown for the roofs, like that. And then maybe that other brown on the top of this roof's a little darker. And If it's too dark, no worries. You can always take your tissue, roll up your tissue a little bit, fold it up, make a little square. Make a little square with your tissue, fold it up, and then just press it on there, and you can lighten that up a bit. That's perfect now. Now it looks a little better, not as dark. We didn't want it to go too dark with that. Okay, and this is in shadow over here, like this. So we're going to keep that in shadow, making it a darker to a medium tonal value over here on the fishing shacks on this side. The sunlight's not really making it over to this front side of the fishing shack. Now we're going to have a look at that other dark there. It's easy to identify these darks, isn't it? That's why we start with the darks. We start with the darks because you can really see them quite simply. Here's another dark right here too before we go over to this other boat. There's another dark there. And then we have another dark here. This fishing boat here is another dark we can kind of identify, and we just get that in there. And then there's another dark over here in the sailboat, like that. And I think that's really looking good. We have the darks working for us really well. Next thing I would say is let's grab a little bit of purple up here and some brown. And look at that, perfect, a nice purplish blue, maybe a little bit of blue, more blue over here. So we're using the same colors, this one blue, which is like a French ultramarine blue, a little bit of purple we just added to that, and we're using a little bit of that brown mixture before that we had for the boats, just to darken it up a bit. And we don't want it too dark, so let's make sure we use maybe something like this over here. See how I've added a little more water? These mixes we made first when we first started were just straight paint, no water. Now we're adding a little bit of water to this mix, so it's a tiny bit of water mixture in there, so you can kind of see that's the key to watercolor. One of the huge keys to watercolor is keeping an eye on what's in your palette. If you can just remember that if you need to make a lighter wash, you'll need more water, so you'll have more water mixed with your colors. If you need really dark colors, it's simple. You just need straight paint in your palette. You don't need any water. And that's where you can dry off your brush, and that's where it makes a lot of sense. If you can constantly check some water off your brush on a sponge or a paper towel or a tissue, you'll constantly keep your paints at the proper consistency with water in mind, how much water is in your paint as you're mixing it on your palette. Sometimes you can just go straight from your palette and not even go over to your mixing area here. You can just go straight in and get some darks and go into your painting without having to put it here. But when you're starting to add a little more water, you're going to need to add a touch more water like this. And then now you can see we can get these distant mountain ranges over across here with that purplish blue. It's going to dry a little lighter than what you're seeing it right now too. Watercolor always dries a little lighter than what it looks like when you're putting it onto the paper, because as it dries it lightens. So we're going to go right across here, and if you paint over a line or two, you can always lift up with a sponge, or a tissue or a paper towel. And then here we're going to go over, we'll paint around that white sail of the sailboat and around this one too. And there you have it. You have that medium tonal value, which is not quite light like the sky, but it is a medium tonal value, which is in between the light and the darks that we have here. Is this medium tone? That is the distant mountain range, and that distant mountain range color does reappear along the coastal area here and there, according to this photograph. So we will put a little bit here and there, like we see. Like that. A little bit over here as well. There's a little bit of a dark you can put for a shadow if you want in front of the building. There. Okay. All right, now this is a good spot to just take a quick break. Right now we've got a chance to let this dry a little bit. The first bit of washes that we've now completed in our painting, that's really, we've made a lot of progress. At this point, a lot of what we have to do is lighter washes with more water, and it's going to be a little more easy and fun and kind of simple application now of paints, because we're just going to create some water and some clouds and sky and some weeds and grasses here in the foreground. So these are the more challenging parts. If you've gotten this far in this painting, you're really, just in a fantastic place, because the rest of the painting is going to go quicker and easier, and you'll see how we're just going to use these same colors that we used to start with. We're not going to use anything really new except maybe a touch of green. We might add a touch of green, and since we are going to add a little bit of green to the painting, what I would do is I would take a touch of green here and just take some green here with your brush and just add a little bit of green in a few spots. Just take some green, and the reason I say that is because not a lot, just a little bit here and there. Kind of like try to hide it. Pretend you're trying to like hide the green, but you just want to put it in a few spots, maybe in the mountains too. You want to add a little bit of green to that mountain color there, here and there, just a little bit. But you can see how I'm just very subtly adding some green. The reason I'm doing that is because if we're going to add green in the foreground here where all the weeds and grasses and things are, we should be adding it to other locations in the painting. Otherwise it'll look unpleasant and it'll look out of place if you just have one green color here in this area in the foreground and you don't have it mixed in other areas. And while we're at it, might as well, we're going to be adding yellow and brown for that sand color. Let's add a little bit of that sand color too, where we added that green. So again, I'm going to add a little more color, if you will. I'm just going to start to add warm and cool colors everywhere in the painting, instead of leaving the painting one-dimensional where you just have one color. Can you see how I'm doing this? I'm adding a little bit of the golden, yellowish brown golden color, like a yellow ochre color. I'm adding that to some of where the purple is in the distant mountains, along with some of the green, and that is going to tie the whole painting together so that it all looks like one cohesive, pleasant, positive looking painting with everything working together. Okay. I'm hoping you'll enjoy this part of the painting. Was this not easy? Putting in a little bit of that, infusing a little bit of color into the painting like this. This is quite easy to do. It's probably easier to do it that way than trying to mix a whole lot of colors at one time as you're painting the painting. So always remember, this is kind of like a way to work around working with too many colors at one time. If you want to keep your colors more simple when you're painting in watercolor, you can start off with your basic mixes of colors like we did, which is the browns and the blues to get our darks with a little bit of red mixed in. And then we use some blue and purple for the distant mountains. Now we just take a little bit of green and gold, which we know we're going to use here in the foreground and in the beach area where the sand is and things. So we take those greens and those golds and we simply, like we just did, infuse them into the washes that we already have on the paper. That seems to me easier than trying to take the green and the gold and adding that to the paint mixes that we were creating for the boats and the fishing shacks and the boathouse and some of these other darks. So I'm hoping that works for you, works for me, and we'll come back now, finish up the painting with our foreground, which is the grasses and the weeds and a little bit of sand, and then the shoreline, which is the sand and the beach areas along the coast area here, and then we'll do the sky wash too as well. This will all now go much easier as we have our colors already all set up in the palette. We're not going to add any new colors. We're going to stick with just these colors we have right here and finish out the painting and do all the lights. So now we're doing all the lights of the painting. We did all the darks first and the darker medium tonal values. Now we're going to finish up with our lights, and that's the alla prima method. We start with the darks and we finish up with the lightest lights, and then we'll have a perfect looking composition. Okay, we'll be right back. All right, so now let's take a quick look at the water and the sky. This is going to be our lightest of our lightest washes, and I want you to have a lot of fun with this portion of the painting, because this is now, we're finalizing the painting, and these are more simple parts of the painting that you're going to really be able to just get done quickly and efficiently. So let's do that. The first thing I would do is, when we were painting all of these darker darks and medium tonal values, the water that we were using got quite a bit muddy and murky looking, as you can see here in the water bucket. So I'll dump that out now. And I change my water frequently, as probably many of you that are here on a constant basis, you'll always hear me say, yeah, I'm going to empty out my water now and so forth. So, but that's really important to mention that, because now we're doing very light washes like the sky and the water. We want really light, clean, fresh, clean water in the water bucket so that we can get those light washes. Sometimes if we let our water bucket the water get murky and muddy, and kind of it gets almost like a dark tone to it, next thing you know, our washes become a lot darker and muddier looking, and we can't get that light tone that we want. So that's why we empty out the water bucket at this point and get fresh, clean water. So I'll just put some fresh, clean water in there. And then I might step up to my Simply Simmons number 9 brush. It's a little bit larger, so you can kind of see how we can get a little more larger washes on with a little bit of a larger brush. We could use this too, so you could use your Prang brush for this sky and water and foreground washes next, but I'm going to use just a little bit larger of a brush, and we'll see how that works. So I'll get fresh, clean water in the water bucket, then I come over here and I say, all right, now we're going to be doing, let's start out with the sky. So the sky, I'm just going to say, I'll put the sky wash mix down here, and that's going to be just all of this here. So I'm just going to take all of this color that we've used up here, put that down here with a little bit of water, a little bit more blue, a little bit more blue there. Maybe I'll add this yellow and brown over here for the clouds, maybe a little bit of that grayish cloud color. So that's easy enough to do. Take some of the brown and the yellow with a little bit of the blue and make sort of like a grayish color like that. So now we have the sky color, a little bit of the gray clouds up here, and that's going to be our wash. The next thing I would do is I would take I'll erase this pencil line here I made for the clouds. I think I'm just going to erase that few pencil lines that I made in the sky. I use a kneaded eraser, so just to let you know, kneaded erasers are fantastic. What they do is they lift off the pencil lines and take the pencil lines off your watercolor paper, and they don't leave any crumbs at all. So if you look up kneaded eraser, and again, this is down below in the comments section, all my art supplies. Kneaded erasers are fantastic though, because you don't want crumbs from erasers that create those little, those little crumb things. You don't want those on your paper or anywhere on your working surface, your table and whatever. So now what I'll do is I'll take fresh, clean water from my water bucket, and I'll just dampen the sky, where the sky is on the watercolor paper. Just like this. Just dampen the sky a little bit with a little bit of water. Not much though, very, very little. Then we'll come over and grab some of this sky wash here, and let's just put that across. And all you have to do is a couple times like this. All you have to do, a couple times, just go across. Less is more, as they say. I use usually a little bit of darker, richer paint at the top, very, very top, and the sky gets lighter as it goes down toward the horizon by the mountains. Not only that, let's add a little bit of that cloud grayish mix like this. too. So we're going to add that little bit of that grayish mix. And then we're going to add just a touch of yellow and orange with a little bit of brown. And that's going to go right along the mountaintops. So you just put a little bit of mountain orangey yellow along that mountaintop all the way across. Very lightly though, not much water at all. You can kind of see how I'm using very little water. You can add a little more blue and maybe make a few darker bits of cloud or cloud type shapes like this at the top. And that is it. It should dry lighter. If you think you want a little bit too dark, you take your tissue and you just lift up in a few places like that. Now we're going to do the same thing with the water. We'll make this wash here where the water is going to be blue like that, just like we did before. A little bit of that grayish color again, same thing, brown and yellow, maybe a little touch of orange. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to wet the paper a little bit just with a damp brush. So I take the brush, dip it in the water, maybe dry a little bit of water off it on a paper towel or tissue, and then just dampen the paper just a little bit where the water is. Not too much though. You don't want to flood the paper out with a lot of water. Just dampen that paper a tiny bit. Helps the paint just to move around a little bit and kind of mix and mingle and makes it look like a watercolor painting. Okay, so I did that. Next, then I go in, I get my watercolor, and the same thing, we're going to go like this right across, just like this across the painting. Maybe a little bit of green in there too. A little bit of green mixed in there with the blue. And then I just flow it on around like so. Very little water though. I'm just getting enough water to get that water and paint onto that paper without too much water flooding around, and a little bit of purplish too. We want to get that purple from the sky a little bit. So we go up here. You just imagine you're reusing the colors constantly in this whole painting. We did add a little bit of green to the water just to give it that little more of a and then some more blue. A little more blue in the sky. Maybe I made that sky a little bit too purple. Perfect time. I just go back in there, scrub on some light, very light blue wash like that. A little bit of green in there, even though I know there's no green usually in the sky all that much. I will add a little bit in there because, and in the water too, because we're going to have green down here too. So, all right. Now let's create the sand, brown and yellow and orange, mostly yellow and brown. Brown, a little bit of brown, a little bit of yellow. And then we're just going to do some sand colors here. Leave some white paper here too. But that looks good, the sand color like that. And leave white paper too. That's going to be the really bright white sand that you see along the shore. Okay, and then a little bit of green too. We wanted to put some green in the hills here. There's some green but leave some of those whites too. Okay. And then the last thing we're going to do is this foreground here. Same thing, wet the paper. Here you can add a little more water. Not a lot, but you know, dampen the paper up like this with your brush. Dampen the paper up. And then we're going to mix some green, some gold, brown. So we're going to have brown, a gold color, some green over here, a little bit of brown over here, a little bit of purple too. So you can kind of see we're using the same colors. We didn't change any colors now. Now we're just going to go in, grab with our brush the colors we just created, and we just do that. We just drag it on down and then just have fun with it. Mix the colors around. You can even flip the brush up this way. It's probably better to do it this way, right? Grass and weeds grow upwards toward the light, so that's how we would kind of try to get the paint strokes, the brush strokes, going that same direction, upwards, like that. Okay, and then green. We got to mix some green in there. That's where the grass is greener, on the other side. And you have some fun with this. Enjoy yourself, have fun. Sometimes you have little stories you create as you go in your mind. You think of a funny conversation you had or something. Okay, there we go. So we mixed our greens, browns, golds, even a little bit of that blue and purple. We want to get a little bit of the blue and purple in there too. And I just make sure I paint along the tape. This way then we have a nice bit of coverage right along the tape edge. Then what I like to do as well is some more of that blue and purple and brown. And I just like to do a couple little splashes. Texture. Good to have some texture here in the foreground. And it's kind of diffusing. You can kind of see it. It's sort of, you know, diffusing as it goes. If you oversplash, you just lift up the oversplash with your tissue, like that. You can see I maybe needed to add a little more blue over here on the top of this boat area. A little more blue. So if you see a few spots that are you didn't get the first time, you know, you add a little blue there. And then if it doesn't work, you just lift it up with a tissue like that. I think that's good. I think we have a finished painting. And we could do a few little extra things to it. There might be some light here coming through. And then it's darker over here. Some areas that it's darker underneath. There might be some shadowing under here. There might be a reflection there. So then maybe we take some brown and blue to make a dark brown and blue. A little bit of red. Brown. maybe go back, maybe we can go back to our brush over here with the Prang brush. And maybe we'll make this, we'll just do this little bit of a mast here for the boat. Like that. Like that. And maybe that goes up quite a ways, like so. And this one here too. Like that. And a little bit of a dark there. Another dark over here. So if you left out a few darks, you know, you can kind of get those in. And a little bit darker on that side there. And you can see everything is coming together now. Everything looks fine. You might add a little bit of titanium white right now to just recapture a few lights if you want. I'm trying to think. Everything looks good. I think I just needed to maybe, let's do that. Let's come back and just touch up a little bit with our white, maybe. Our white, titanium white, with a few things. But we have to let this all dry now 100%. So I think this looks good. Now I can add a few more splashes where it looks like the paper's drying a little bit. So that's good. And again, if your splashes don't look great, just lift them up. Probably have to let this dry 100% before we add some more splashes. Okay, all right, so we're just gonna let this dry for about another 15-20 minutes to half an hour, or you can use a blow dryer and blow dry it off in like 5 minutes and then finish up the painting. But I think it's sort of looking good. It's all right, so just a few details to go and we'll be done. All right, the final touches, let's get those completed. I'll use the Prang brush and a little bit of white, titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre or a little bit of yellow and brown mixed in to the top of the paint tube, just to give it a little bit of a warmer kind of feel to it. Orange, maybe a little orange and yellow. Put a little bit of that into the color, just a little bit. We're only going to do a couple of highlights. Let's do a highlight here on the boat, right there, just to kind of separate that. That looks good. Maybe another bit here. Let's make this sail. For this sailboat, let's get a little bit of that titanium white. Like that. And then there's another sailboat here. Let's get a little bit of the white there too. Sometimes we paint over some things. Let's recapture a few of the lights. You can add a little highlight or two on the masts of the boats if you want. Like that. Maybe a couple on the top. Maybe there's a little bit of a highlight here on the top of the roof there, and up here maybe too. But just a few here and there. We don't want to go overboard with too many. Maybe there's a little bit of highlight here on the top of the boat, like that. Maybe a bit here, like that, just like that. There, perfect, that's it. It was maybe a white boat there. All right, and the last thing we can do is sometimes you'll pick up a specialty brush or two just to get a little more definition in your paintings, a little more detail. So what I did is I mixed up a little bit of the green and the brown, and I have this is a fan brush. This is a fan brush I've had for many, many years. I think I started out with this when I was oil painting many, many years ago. But you just mix up a little bit of brown, a little bit of green with some water, brown, green, yellow, Maybe a touch of blue too over here, just to get a little bit of a dark like this, like a darkish green. And you take your fan brush and you just do a couple quick grass type shapes, brush strokes like this. And what that does is it just really gives more detail to the foreground, like that, like this, like that. And that's fine. Then I might one more time just see if I can get a little bit of water. Sometimes to get some of those splashes to work, we have to add a little more water. So I think that should be enough water. And I'll use my Simply Simmons brush. And now that that paper is all dry here, we can just add some of the splashes here, just to give a couple. And you can use, do some finger painting, just, maybe do a couple, give it a little texture. You can blot up some of the splashes if you oversplash a little bit. You can do that. But I think that's good. We might make a fence post over here. That might work good. You can do a fence post maybe over here just to give a little more definition over there. Maybe we might dry off the brush a little bit and just have a tiny bit of paint left on the brush, barely any paint, and then maybe we can get like maybe some rigging, and then I just do like my if you're going to do like a little bit of rigging, like some ropes and things and cables on your boats, you'd want to dry off your brush quite a bit and just leave a tiny bit of paint left on your brush, and then you just kind of hover your hand over the top of the boat and try to make the shape that you think you want that cable to look like, and you just do that. You go a couple times, like practice runs up above it, and then you just do a quick little like that. And then maybe this way too, maybe one here. So now I'm going to make this one more vertical. This one was more of a curve. And it doesn't have to be all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. Leave some imagination there. You don't have to, maybe you can do that. And then here, same thing, up and down. This one's more, it's going to be almost straight up and down, but I don't want to go the whole way across. I just want to get an indication of it being there. So I just do a couple of practice things like this, and then just like that. Good. Maybe another one over here that we can barely see, like that. Maybe a couple of those. Maybe we do a couple, maybe a boom over here. Maybe we'll do a boom over here too, just like that. Like that. And you could do a couple little more details, but I wouldn't go too overboard. I would say at some point you want to just do a couple details and be fine with it and not go overboard. And I think this is really good. We'll peel off the tape in a second here just to see how it looks. Maybe another little white bit of highlight there. And that's good. Okay, so we'll peel off the tape here and just kind of see how it looks isolated with the border around it. So that's pretty much how it'll look when it's framed. Much better like that. You see how that really makes a nice crispy edge. That looks good. Like that. And then you can put a mat on top of that and then put a frame over it. I would say definitely have some extra mats around and some extra frames that you can kind of put your paintings in. See how they look framed and matted. A lot of times it comes to life. Your painting looks so much better, and I know you're doing a great job out there with your paintings, and they're looking beautiful. And when you add a mat and a frame to it, it just takes your painting to a whole nother level. And I'm hoping you're doing that, getting yourself a few frames at the frame store, at the local big box stores, the hobby shops. They all have frames, really nice frames. You can get mats and frames and you'll be all set. You'll be able to put some of these together for gifts, maybe for the holidays, and you can also make a few for yourself. Maybe you can put a few up on your walls in your house. Have a great time of it. Okay, and we'll see you very soon. Again, I always say thank you for sharing your comments in the comment section. Questions, please leave them below in the comment section. Also, too, again, if you've not subscribed, feel free to subscribe. This way you don't miss a thing. We're going to be here week after week, month after month, and year after year with watercolor painting, and it's going to be the same process and techniques and methods over and over and over again. So if you're sticking here on a weekly basis, maybe getting here at least every week or every other week, you're going to learn all the information you're going to need to really create beautiful watercolors, and I can guarantee you that. And so we'll keep working together, and we'll see you on the next video.